everybody, welcome to Unit 6 Video 1. This is on I can solve quadratic equations by completing the square. Alright, so you use completing the square whenever you have a quadratic equation or a parabola and you're trying to solve for the roots of that parabola, but it's not easily factorable. So like if you look here, you're saying, okay, what are the factors of -4 that add to 2? You can't find them. So we use a method like completing the square. So here are all the steps that you need for completing the square. So we'll just kind of walk through them. And what you have to remember also is that, remember, this is called standard form. And standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c, where c is the constant term. Remember, c is the constant, b is the coefficient of x, and a is the coefficient of x squared. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my equation down here. X squared plus 2x minus 4 equals 0. And so then let's go ahead and look at step 1. It says, get all the terms with variables on one side of the equation and constants on the other side. So -4 is the constant term, so I need to add this to the other side here. So I'm going to add 4 to the other side. And now when I rewrite the equation, I'm going to leave a little bit of space or a blank spot after the 2x, and I'll show you how come in a moment. And I'm going to do the same thing on this other side. I'm going to put a blank spot here. So this one says complete the square by finding half of the coefficient of x, which is also called b. Remember, the coefficient of x is b. And then square the result. Add this number to both sides. All right, so I'm going to find half the coefficient of x. So the coefficient is 2. So half of 2 is a positive 1. And I'm going to put in this, on the blank spot, a positive 1, and then it says square it. So, and then I'm going to add that number to the other side. So positive 1 squared is going to give me a positive 1. So I added it to the other side. Now, the reason I left it in this parentheses right here is because this next step is factor the result, or the resulting perfect square trinomial. Well, since I took half of this, I already know that this is my simplified number. So when I factor it, it would say x plus 1 squared. Because if I were to factor this out, it'd say x plus 1 times x plus 1, I would get my trinomial. All right, so then on the other side, I want to go ahead and do that math there. Okay, so when I add those together, I get 5. And then, because what we're trying to do is we're solving for the roots. We're trying to find where this parabola crosses the x-axis. So I need to find what x equals. So then that means my next step here is, now that I have it as x plus 1 squared equals 5, I can solve by taking the opposite of squaring something is square rooting something. So I'm going to square root both sides, which is going to leave me with just x plus 1 here. On the right hand side, remember, since we're solving for this x and we're taking the square root, I'm going to get a positive and a negative rad 5. So I'm just going to write it as plus or minus rad 5. And then I can get x by itself by subtracting 1 from each side. So when I do that, I get x equals -1 plus or minus rad 5. So that's where your parabola would cross your x-axis. So these are your roots. And remember, there's actually 2 separate answers here. It's -1 plus rad 5 and -1 minus rad 5. But you can go ahead and leave it as plus or minus rad 5. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next problem here. So here's our next problem. And again, we're solving by completing the square. So again, we want to go through all of those steps that we did. And so remember, our first step is to get all of the constants to the other side. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. And then again, like I like to write that blank spot once I rewrite it. So I have x squared plus 6x blank equals -3 blank. And then you take half the coefficient of x, which is b. So half of 6 is going to be 3. So I'm going to say plus 3 squared, and then you square it. So plus 3 squared would give me 9. So I'm adding a positive 9 to this side. Okay. You can think about it as, you could say this, plus 3 squared if you wanted to write both of them, but you're going to get 9 here because we actually have to do the computation. Whereas here, we're leaving it in factored form. So then the next part is to write this to factor it. So you get x plus 3 squared. Because remember, if you were to multiply this out, you'd get 6x in the middle and the 9 on the end here. All right, so then we're going to do the math here. So we have negative 3 plus 9, which is going to give us 6. And then, again, we're trying to solve for x. We're finding the roots. So we need to get x all alone. So we need to take the square root, because that's going to get rid of this square here. So now we get x plus 3 equals plus or minus rad 6. So when we take the square root, we get 2, a positive and a negative. And then we're going to get x by itself. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So now I get x equals negative 3 plus or minus rad 6. So then those are my roots, or where my parabola is going to cross the x-axis. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next page. Okay, so this one again looks very similar, except now what you'll notice is it says solving when a is greater than 1. So now the coefficient of x squared, or a, is greater than 1. On the other side, there was just a 1 in front. So the steps, now you can see there's 5 steps. So the only difference is this one here. The second one here. You have to, we can't complete the square or do the factoring until this coefficient, we're rid of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the same way. I'm going to rewrite it. So I get 4x squared minus 16x minus 9 equals 0. So remember, our first step is to move the constant to the other side. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So then when I do that, I get 4x squared minus 16x equals 9. I'm not going to put that blank spot yet because now I need to do this one. Divide both sides by the coefficient of x squared. So in this case, it's a 4. So I need to divide everything by 4 because we got to divide both sides. So, but what we do to one, we have to do to all of them. So when I do that here, I'm now left with just x squared. In the middle, I have a negative 4x. Now I'm going to put my blank spot, and then on the right-hand side, I have 9/4. And then I'm going to put a blank spot here. So now I'm going to go ahead and just do what I did on the other, what I was doing earlier. You take half the coefficient of b, or the coefficient of x, which is called b. So I'm going to divide that by 2. So that's going to give me negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So I'm going to put a negative 2 here, square it. Then I'm going to actually square it. So negative 2 squared is going to give me a positive 4. So then my next step is to factor it. So I get x minus 2 squared equals 9/4 plus, this would be 4 over 1. But remember, when you're adding fractions, they have to have common denominators. So 4 over 1, you want to think of it as 16/4. Okay, so now that I have 16/4, I can go ahead and simplify this side. So I have x minus 2 squared. 9/4 plus 16/4 is going to give me 25/4. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go up here. So I'm just going to rewrite this. X minus 2 squared equals 25/4. So then again, we're trying to get x by itself. So I need to get rid of this square here. So I'm going to take the square root, and I have x minus 2 equals plus or minus 5 over 2, because both of these were perfect squares, so I can take them out of the radical. Now, I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I get x equals 2 plus or minus 5 over 2. So now this one, you can actually go ahead and simplify both answers. So remember, you're saying x equals 2 plus 5 over 2, and x equals 2 minus 5 over 2. So let's go ahead and do this addition first. 2 plus 5 over 2. Well, remember the common denominator, so that would turn into 4 over 2 plus 5 over 2, which is going to give us x equals 9 over 2. And for this one, we have same thing. It's 2 over 1, so the common denominator would be 2. So then you get 4 over 2 minus 5 over 2. So x equals negative 1/2. So then there's where my parabola would cross my x-axis. So those are my roots. All right. So let's go ahead and do this next one here. The only difference with this one too is now that there was a number on the other side, but that's okay. We still have to do our rules. We have to move the constant over first. So the first thing you want to do here is you want to add 69 to the other side. So when you add 69 here, you're adding it to the -6. So when you add that together, I'm going to rewrite it. So 3x squared plus 12x equals 63. And then you need to divide by the coefficient of x squared since it's greater than 1. So we're dividing everything by 3. So when we do that, we get x squared plus 4x, I'm going to put my blank spot, equals 21. And again, I'm going to put my blank spot. So then we take half the coefficient of x, so half of 4 is 2. So, and I'm going to put a positive 2. And so then remember, we're going to square this, add it to the other side. So 2 squared is 4. So this becomes plus 4. So then I factor it. So x plus 2 squared equals 25. So then I need to solve for x. I'm trying to get x by itself. So I'm going to take the square root so that it gets rid of this square here. So then I'm left with x plus 2 equals plus or minus 5. Then I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I get x equals -2 plus or minus 5. And in this one, again, I can simplify both answers. So I'm going to go ahead and say x equals -2 plus 5 would give me 3. And also -2 minus 5 would give me -7. So those are my roots, 3 and -7. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and try this one. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can complete the square. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how you did. So remember here, you take half the coefficients of x. So -2, half of -2 is -1. So you want to make sure you're keeping that as a negative. Then when you square it, it's going to turn to positive, and that's what you add to the other side. So -1 squared is a positive 1. So now I'm going to get +1 on the side. But here you have to keep it negative because it's the coefficient here was negative. All right, also you wanted to make sure that since this square root of 8 can be simplified, you always want to fully simplify. So remember, the square root of 8, you think of it as 4 times 2. Square root of 4 is 2, so I get 2 rad 2. Then, since we're finding x, we're finding the root, so we're going to add 1 to both sides. So I get x equals 1 plus or minus 2 rad 2. All right, thank you for watching the video.